mentioned that we're discussing now. She's next door to Angela Rayner, and half that by Farage. I mean, I think she did pretty well, and after all, she's an ex-naval reservist. She knows something about it. So yes, I will be voting. The trouble is that a lot of the Conservative MPs that I know and know of, my local MP is Laura Barris in Newbury. I mean, they're under threat. They've got, I mean, the swing is right. A lot of very good, not necessarily Conservative MPs, good MPs are going to lose their seat. We will enter into very foreign, unknown land.
Can I just put this to you? Yeah. I just put one comment to you, Nick, from Alan, who's got a question text, who says, Richard Tice was right when he was talking about any questions. Sunak had no choice but to apologise, but it's not going to wash. If it was all a plan all along, then it wasn't a mistake. It was yet another sign that Sunak has no head for politics. And it does seem, and he has said in numerous interviews, and numerous times, in the same interview, that this was a long-planned departure. What did you make of that?
Well, I was reported up, so we can talk about it. If that is the case, that's the going back to the people that are advised, because those plans were made before he called the election. The problem with it is that I think he actually instead of scurry around and seem like he sent out
James Cartledge, Minister of Defence Procurement, yeah?
And he said, I want to do well what the Conservatives have done with cabinet including the Minister of Veterans, and went through all the various bits and pieces that the Conservatives are doing rightly for veterans. But that goes with the job. That's not about how wonderful we are when we've made a mistake. That's the job. The mistake is not understanding the mood of the nation. Read the room and you respect every person.
Okay, Nick, thank you very much. Shimon has been in touch via email asking if Sunak has library apologies. I really question the greeting by all critics from major opposition parties of what they're thinking would be a better candidate for being Prime Minister.
In the First World War, yes. My uncle Sam was wounded, and then the Second World War, my father-in-law Jim was in the Royal Navy. He served in the Atlantic, and he served in the Far East. He was a member of the Lone Star Association. seen him on a number of commemorations, on the news, on different programs. We've given his time there. You know, I really do think he's trying. And, you know, at the end of the day, I think, you know, his political opponents, they're using it, using this story really to keep the story alive. And also some of his own parties got their own agenda. You know, for me, I think, every day. This obviously, Sudak's apology is neither here nor there. His original decision tells us all we need to know about his attitudes and his personality. And may complete disregard for something profoundly important to them. It will define him now more than what we said already. And Maggie says, what Rishi did was wrong. Can we just drop it now? Well, not just for a little while longer. Can we stay with it, Maggie? Because it is the thing that most people want to talk about today. Every second. Let's talk about the other areas that we have offered this afternoon. What if
domnul știu, ce faceți? Adevărat în viață. Voi? Ce mai ziceți? Mâncați varză? Ce? Da, da, da. Paste cu sos de Bologna. Și celelalte fete mici, ce fac? Hai, Andreea, mai. Și Maria unde? Da? Că m-am uitat pe afară și nu prea vedeam nimic. Era... A plouat, a? În spate, unde, în grădină? S-au dus acolo? A terasă, da. Cam plouat acum, cam plouat, da. Oh, se joacă în apă? Aha. Da, e bine și pentru el. E un loc fain. Așa. Și ce mai ziceți? E o fată pe acolo? Micuță? Dar numai voi două. Doar Andreea, că Andreea știe deja că mergem la curburi, dar fetele cealaltă nu știu. Am scărat, deci eu nu știu că nu le zis deloc la fete. La fain, dacă nu spuneam niciodată, nu mi-am dat seama. E Andreea, atâta. Andreea n-au zis mai departe, decât la Maria. Nimic. Nu e zi, nu? Da, am văzut că cireșele de jos roșii, ce faină e și încep să facă. Să vedem. Iar da, și trebuie să adună apă la copăcei. Dacă zici că sunteți la tropice. Da, am văzut și asta. E fain. E bine așa. Așa că să-mi faci un video cu copăcei. Unul câte unul. Da, dacă mai ajungi pe acolo. Asta da, dar depinde de pământul care l-au acolo. Poate să mai aibă pământ cam acid. A, da, se vede cam de fiecare dată. Puteți lucrul ăsta? Da. Și fetele au fost colivat, au fost toate patru la biserică? Mai la două. Aha. Da, am înțeles. Rămâne așa atunci. Deci. A, să nu te duci mâine la biserică? Aha. Da. Eu trebuie ca să scape de răceală de acasă, să nu mai bolnavească pe bunici. Ai văzut-o? L-ai văzut la școală pe el, nu? Nu trebuia să mai lași. Nu trebuia să mai lași pe Ana la școală. Deci o ia pe Ana că uite, să-i răcești școala. Da, asta e, mai nimic. Asta e adevărat, te descoperiști tu America acum. Da, ai terminat de mâncat? Ai terminat de mâncat? Da, nu știu, vreau să te întreb ceva. Ca să urmărești video ăsta care ți l-am trimis, e foarte fain. cu rectorul universității. E psiholog, da. Și știi multe lucruri interesante, știi? Dă așa o notă diferită, știi? Te învață că chiar dacă nu ești ok, e bine. Chiar dacă e o notă rea, nu contează. Mergi mai departe, stai liniștit, că o să vină și timpul să o îndrepți. Da, ok. În șoc. Da. Ce? Ea nu vrei ce note are? Aha. Da. Băi, eu am zis, dacă era să fie corectă, i-ar fi dat jumătate din punctaj. Deci un 7,5 ar fi fost ok. Că atât a obtut, Andrei. Da. Tot la matematică? Acum matematica e un pic mai grea, nu e așa ușor. Aha, ok. Acolo, da, acolo era de explicat transformarea aia, de atâta, asta e, și data viitoare o să știi. O să-și aduc aminte pentru toată viața. Da. Exact, matematica e cum e șahul. Stai la gândit acolo. Da. Exact la fel. Ce are, notă mică sau ce? Să-i what? Și ai acum? Dar cum se calculează? Așa. Da. Așa. Bursa de studiu. Așa. Și bursa... Da, și bursa de studiu. Nu mai există. Da, și bursă socială nici aia. Atâta, da, da. Da, da, și bursa de... Da, sunt 3 tipuri. De studiu, de merit și socială. Păi de studiu eram până la 9,50. Când aveai media 9,50 peste, aveai de merit. Am înțeles. Doar una. Doar una. Aha. Da, da. Am înțeles. Păi vezi? Da. E bine așa, e o recompensă. Îi crește stima de sine. Uite, Maria, da, zi? Că ești din asta, ești veveriță? Da. Târziu poate să meargă la Olimpiadă, nu? În clasa 7-8. Să vedem că merge la Olimpiadă, la fălticeni sau la social. Un concurs mai mare. Da, nu, închid. Poți să închizi, poți să închizi. Doamne ajută. Doamne ajută. Pa. La revedere. Pa. Da, și la mine e cald.
Whereas many other people are really extremely well off and driving very large cars and flying all over the world and basically able to spend money like it was water. I mean, you need to think these people, the people who are very wealthy, very well off, should take on this sort of small
The big,
responsibility to become a
Christopher, I'm stopping you because we've run out of time, but I'm glad we did hear from you. That's all we've got time for this week. See you again next week.
Any Answers was presented by Anita Anand and produced in Cardiff by Ed Prenderville. It was a BBC Audio Wales production for Radio 4. Events spiral out of control at the stables in the Archers next, and then at 3:15 our Orwell versus Kafka weekend continues with Juliet Stevenson reading from 1984.
Keep up with all the cricket action with the Test Match Special Podcast. With you throughout the summer, from the T20 World Cup to the Test Series.
And he's in it clean as a whistle back over the long leg boundary.
Including exclusive interviews, in-depth analysis and reaction to the biggest matches.
That batting lineup can stand up with the best of the world of any country.
The Test Match Special Podcast. Listen on BBC Sounds.
BBC News at 3 o'clock. The Israeli military has rescued 4 hostages from Central Gaza. The 3 men were abducted by Hamas from the Nova Music Festival on October 7th. The support group for families of Israeli hostages described the operation to free them as a miraculous triumph and called for the release of all those left in Gaza. Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner from Israeli Defence Forces gave more details about the operation.
They were being held in civilian homes. We were able to reach there with our special forces, a combined force that was able to engage and extract safely the hostages that were being held. They came under fire, extensive fire. We have an officer that was wounded, injured, critically in the extraction, and is currently in hospital.
The wife of the presenter Michael Mosley has released a statement saying his family is refusing to lose hope and wants to find him and the good plans continue. The 67-year-old vanished after setting off from York on Wednesday in Sealy at the couple were on holiday. The focus of the operation was shifted to a remote mountainous area. Sophia Starmer has insisted that the yesterday won't include any surprise tax rises. Early industry has accepted the component. It alleged that Labour inherit planned tax increases after the extra raised planned freedom income thresholds. Liberal Democrats say they'd spend £50 million a year maintaining 3 new national parks. Also, Conservative Party planting 60 million trees a year. And leaders at Ed Davey said the significant cost of the plans would be worth it. Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen in central Copenhagen last night has appeared in court. The Polish national, who's 39, was remanded in custody until later this month. Gordon Moore has the latest. Court stage media, the prosecutor
hospital detailed how the accused was reportedly approved by an interpreter had hit the Prime Minister's right upper arm with a clenched hand and knocked her at around 17:50 last night. In a statement, the Prime Minister's office told the BBC that Ferguson adding that she was safe after shooting and was not stating dangerous. It described the reintroduction of restrictions on liquids in airports of the beach as a countermeasure. The meets will be reinstated at 6 regional airports at midnight so that security standards can be updated. BBC News.
In 15 minutes, we'll be resuming our Orwell versus Kafka weekend with the next instalment of 1984, written by Juliet Stevenson. This is the third of 6 readings from Orwell's classic, which we'll be hearing throughout the day here on Radio 4 as we mark 75 years since it was first published. The final 3 instalments will be tonight at 7, 9 and 11 o'clock, and you can catch up on the readings so far on BBC Sounds. At 4:15 this afternoon, Helen Wilson in this look continuing a detailed explanation of some of the themes to be followed in Kafka's work. Surveillance is the topic of this next programme. Among Ian and Helen's guests, Silke Carlo from the organisation Big Brother Watch. She'll be discussing the extent to which Orwell's warnings were prescient, as well as Kafka's recognition that surveillance becomes internalised subjects of policing themselves. And then also, as part of this special weekend of programmes, the afternoon's drama is The Trial.
Versus Kafka on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds.
What about the arrested for?
Marking the centenary of Franz Kafka's death.
And the authority will disclose what they're charged with or even whether he's been charged yet.
A new adaptation of one of his most famous works.
A court wouldn't recognize an innocent plea. There is protracted acquittal, temporary acquittals, and guilty.
Starring Adrian Scarborough, Nina Wadia, and Iwan Real.
To make guilty sounds so much more virtuous than the alternatives.
Orwell versus Kafka, The Trial, on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds. Tomorrow afternoon at 3.
Now, before alarms are going off for Fallon, the Archers.
Sound great in our sound.
Even in the dream, I knew that you did see it. And I thought I did.
An alien planet.
Maybe the face is perfect. I mean, it was a dream.
Chelsea said you
This is an emergency. He's been incredibly unfair on us.
But everyone thinks it's her fault. What can I say? I can't promise them she hasn't screwed up because I don't know. I feel there's so many veiled or downright direct suggestions that it was her, and then my own partner suggests that it's all my fault for employing my beloved niece who's an alcoholic. Well,
Harrison, how are you doing? Yeah, not bad at all. Is Jolene around? No, she's got money off for time to get her hair done. Oh, well. You can tell her the good news from me. Good news. There's been a bit of a turn for the Wolves. He's been selling all sorts at the back of the van, well, several vans, in fact. Including stuff in case of it. Or, stuff in the legs, I found trouble with the show. It's currently sitting in the place. Yeah, I mean, I know it's not a dangerous dog out, but it's always brilliant, it's brilliant, that's brilliant, Harrison. Christmas journey was his little son. So no, no, not at all. Oh, and we will get into the doctor, we will.
thanks. You want to know how to use it? Yes, please. Like I was doing right now, and like a call back since he's gone. I'd appreciate that, thank you. So sorry, I don't know what to say. No, listen, thank you for living. I'm just exhausted. With the right away and so much work. Yes, of course. And I suppose if I'm honest, I'm feeling rather sad about Duke. Because he's not getting any younger. A bit like me. But I'd hate to lose him. I don't think it'll come to that. Well, of course I hope not. But I'll call you as soon as I can. Yeah? Yes? This is going to sound absurd, and you know us country people aren't supposed to get too emotionally attached to our animals. It's more easily said than done. And I know what you're going to say. You do? They're a lifeline, aren't they? Connection to the real world. And whatever's going on in our lives, however awful things are, we have to send to them, can't we? Of course. That's why we love them. And why I like working with them. You do everything. You do. Yes, I do. Anyway, I'll let you get on with it. But I am so sorry. Deeply, deeply sorry for you. I really do understand that you aren't personally to blame. I know that you run excellent stables. Up until now. Jakob says you must have been incredibly unlucky if these things happen. I can't find a pig. Sorry? Single. The original person. I cannot find a pig. All the horses perfect. Alice swears that she found it, but I can't find it. I see. And if that's the case, then the stables is my fault. And you could easily say that I am personally at fault for trusting Alice in the first place.
So, how are things with you and Farron? If you don't mind me asking.
No, I don't mind at all. I mean, you can do it's not my business.
But it is your business, and she's your daughter. Well, stepdaughter. No, she feels like a daughter. But you're well within your rights to tell me to get lost.
Well, obviously, I do know my rights as a copper.
Yeah.
But you want to know if we're okay? Of course you do. I'll be the same.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. And I can't lie to you, Kenton. It's been the worst time we've ever had. And I think when she was staying here for how long? A few nights, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was probably the lowest point, really.
I wanted to say to you then, when Farron was here, that we weren't taking any sides.
Oh, well, I didn't think you were.
Good.
Well, thanks for saying it.
I think it's important to say this too. We really care about Johnny. Johnny is the to say that. Well, we do. And if Fallon's the closest to me, it's not. Honestly.
Well, that means a lot.
crisis has passed, I really think you need to investigate how this happened. And make sure it never happens again.
Hey,
Hey, yourself.
what are you doing?
I was called out here.
Why? What's wrong? What's happened?
Oh, no, nothing bad. No, there was a minor collision just outside the village. And a bit of argy-bargy between the two drivers, and someone else called the police, but it was fine then. Some people just want around, don't they?
Not me.
Not me neither.
It's been really amazing for the last few days to just have normal conversations again.
Exactly.
But, have you just been in the ball?
Yes. Sorry, I thought, well, it was a chance to tell Kenton and the woman.
Were they thrilled?
Well, Kenton was. Your mum wasn't there, she wanted to tell.
Oh, yeah.
But I better get back.
Yeah, of course. But, just being there for... I shouldn't say this, but... I feel like it was a lot.
Well, you said it now.
Oh, no, but seriously. Well, that you go. Oh, yeah.
You know, I'm pretty thrilled myself at the problem.
Well, yeah.
Very satisfying.
Well, hopefully you just stand the front once in your line work.
Yeah, of course, but you know, it's never often. Especially when it's someone you love that's been ill. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. I know what you're saying. Let's not go there, yeah?
Yeah. Anyway, okay, I'll see you tonight.
Yeah. No, I'll see you tonight. Is it worse?
He's got more lumps than the temperature.
I told Oliver we'd call him. Is that all right?
Oh, of course.
We've had a couple of difficult conversations this morning, and I think he'd rather speak with you than me.
No problem.
I told him about the missing paper.
Why?
No. It gets worse, Jacob. Well, it gets better, but then it gets worse too. Practically a minute later, I went and found it. And I called it back straight away. I thought, save myself.
No, it is good news that I found it. It's very good news.
Do you believe that?
Don't know that you know it. It's so small. Continues a day of readings from George Orwell's dystopian classic 1984, published 75 years ago this year. Despite the danger, party member Winston Smith has been exploring the Pole District, desperate to find out what life was like before the revolution. But is someone following him? "1984" by George Orwell.
Episode 3. Read by Juliet Stevenson. Winston was walking up a cobbled street of little two-story houses, with battered doorways which gave straight onto the pavement, and which were somehow curiously suggestive of rat holes. There were puddles of filthy water here and there among the cobbles. In and out of the dark doorways, people swarmed in astonishing numbers. Perhaps a quarter of the windows in the street were broken and boarded up. Most of the people paid no attention to Winston. A few eyed him with a sort of guarded curiosity. At this moment, his train of thought stopped abruptly. He halted and looked up. He was in a narrow street with a few dark little shops, interspersed among dwelling houses. Immediately above his head there hung 3 discoloured metal balls, which looked as if they had once been gilded. He seemed to know the place. Of course, he was standing outside the junk shop where he bought the diary. A twinge of fear went through him. It had been a sufficiently rash act to buy the book in the beginning, and he had sworn never to come near the place again. And yet the instant that he allowed his thoughts to wander, his feet had brought him back here of their own accord. It was precisely against suicidal impulses of this kind that he had hoped to guard himself by opening the diary. At the same time he noticed that although it was nearly 21 hours, the shop was still open. With the feeling that he would be less conspicuous inside than hanging about on the pavement, he stepped through the door. If questioned, he could plausibly say that he was trying to buy razor blades. The proprietor had just lighted a hanging oil lamp, which gave off an unclean but friendly smell. He was a man of perhaps 60, frail and dull, with a long, benevolent nose and mild eyes distorted by thick spectacles. His hair was almost white, but his eyebrows were bushy and still black. The spectacles, his gentle, fussy movements, and the fact that he was wearing an aged jacket of black velvet gave him a vague air of intellectuality, as though he had been some kind of literary man, or perhaps a musician. His voice was soft as they faded, and his accent less debased than that of the majority of Gauls. "I recognised you on the pavement," he said immediately. "You're the gentleman that bought the young lady's keepsake album. That was a beautiful bit of paper, that was. Cream laid, it used to be called. There's been no paper like that made for, I dare say, 50 years. He peered at Winston over the top of his spectacles. "Is there anything special I can do for you?" "I was puzzling," said Winston vaguely. "I just looked in. I don't want anything in particular." "It's just as well," said the man, "because I don't suppose I could have satisfied you." He made an apologetic gesture with his soft palmed hand. "You see how it is? An empty shop, we might say. Between you and me, the antique trade's just about finished. No demand for them, and no stock either." The tiny interior of the shop was in fact uncomfortably full, but there was almost nothing in it of the slightest value. Only on a small table in the corner was there a litter of odds and ends, lacquered snuff boxes, agate brooches and the like, which looked as though they might include something interesting. As Winston wandered towards the table, his eye was caught by a round, smooth thing that gleamed softly on the wall. He picked it up. It was a heavy lump of glass, curved on one side, flat on the other, making almost a hemisphere. There was a peculiar softness, as of rainwater, in both the colour and the texture of the glass. At the heart of it, magnified by the curved surface, Winston immediately paid over the $4 and slid the coveted pin into his pocket. What appealed to him about it was not so much its beauty as the air it seemed to possess of belonging to an age quite different from the present one. The soft, rain-watery glass was not like any glass that he had ever seen. The thing was doubly attractive because of its apparent uselessness, though he could guess that it must once have been intended as a paperweight. It was very heavy in his pocket, but fortunately it did not make much of a bulge. It was a queer thing, even a compromising thing for a party member to have in his possession. Anything old, and for that matter, anything beautiful, was always vaguely suspect. The old man had grown himself cheerful after receiving the pockets. Winston realized that he would have accepted 3 or even 2. There's another room upstairs. You might care to have a look at it, he said. It's not much. Just a few things, he said. He lit another lamp, and his powered back led the way slowly up the steep and worn stairs of a long tiny passage into a room which did not bring onto the street, but looked down on the poplar gardens and the forest of chimney pots. Winston noticed that the furniture was still arranged as though the room were meant to be lived in. There was a small carpet on the floor, a picture on the walls, and a deep, spattering armchair drawn up to the fireplace. An old-fashioned August clock, fell down the face, between the rain and the mantelpiece. Under the window, in the occupied lower portion of the room, was an enormous bed with a mattress still on it. "We lived here till my wife died," said the old man after gradually. "I'm selling the furniture off while I'm living here. Now that's a beautiful mahogany bed, or at least it would be if you could get the bugs into it." He was holding the lamp high up so as to illuminate the whole room, and in the warm, dim light the place looked curiously inviting. The thought flitted through Winston's mind that it would probably be quite easy to rent the room for a few dollars a week, if he dared to take the risk. It was a wild, impossible notion, to be abandoned as soon as thought of, but the room had awakened in him a sort of nostalgia, a sort of ancestral memory. It seemed to him that he knew exactly what it felt like to sit in a room like this, in an armchair beside an open fire, with your feet in the family, and a kettle on the hob, utterly alone, utterly secure, with nobody watching you, no voice pursuing you, no sound except the singing of the kettle and the friendly ticking of the clock. There's no telescope. He could not open the door. Said the old man, "Too expensive. I never seem to feel the need of it." There was a small bookcase in the other corner, and Winston had already gravitated towards it. It contained nothing but rubbish. The hunting down and destruction of books had been done with the same thoroughness and pull that it was everywhere else. It was very unlikely that there existed anywhere in Oceania a copy of a book printed earlier than 1960. The old man, still carrying a lamp, was standing in front of a picture in a rosewood frame, which hung on the other side of the fireplace, opposite the bed. Now, if you happen to be interested in old prints too, Winston came across to examine the picture. It was a steel engraving of an oval building with rectangular windows and a small tower in front. Winston gazed at it for some moments. It seemed vaguely familiar. "The frame's fixed to the wall," said the old man. "But I could unscrew it for you, I dare say." "I know that building," said Winston finally. "It's a ruin now. It's in the middle of the street outside the Palace of Justice." "That's right. Outside the law courts. It was bombed in... many years ago. It was a church at one time. St. Clement Danes, its name was. Oranges and lemons, say the bells of St. Clement's." Winston that?" said Winston. "That was a rhyme we had when I was a little boy. How it goes on, I don't remember, but I do know it ended up, 'Here comes a candle to light you to bed. Here comes a chopper to chop off your head.' It was a kind of a dance. They held out their arms for you to pass under, and when they came to 'Here comes a chopper to chop off your head,' they brought their arms down and caught you. All the London churches, really. All the principal ones, that is." Winston wondered vaguely to what century the church belonged. It was always difficult to determine the age of a London building. Anything large and impressive, if it was reasonably new in appearance, was automatically claimed as having been built since the Revolution, while anything that was obviously of earlier date was ascribed to some dim period called the Middle Ages. The centuries of capitalism were held to have produced nothing of any value. One could not learn history from architecture any more than one could learn it from books. Statues, inscriptions, memorial stones, the names of streets, anything that might throw light upon the past had been systematically altered. "I never knew it had been a church," he said. "There's a lot of them left, really," said the old man, "though they've been put to other uses. Now, how did the rhyme go? Oranges and lemons, say the bells of St. Clement's. You owe me 3 farthings, say the bells of St. Martin's." Now that's as far as I can get. A farthing, that was a copper coin, looked something like a cent. "Where was St. Martin's?" said Winston. "St. Martin's? That's still standing. It's in Victory Square, alongside the picture gallery." Winston knew the place well. It was a museum used for propaganda displays of various kinds. Scale models of rocket bombs and floating fortresses, waxwork tableaus illustrating enemy atrocities, and the like. Winston did not buy the picture, but he lingered for some minutes more, talking to the old man, whose name, he discovered, was Charrington. Mr. Charrington, it seemed, was a widower, aged 63, and had inhabited this shop for 30 years. All the while that they were talking, a half-remembered rhyme kept running through Winston's head. "Oranges and lemons, see the bells of St. Clement's. You owe me 3 farthings, see the bells of St. Martin's." It was curious, but when you said it to yourself, you had the illusion of actually hearing bells. The bells of a lost London that still existed somewhere or other, disguised and forgotten. From one ghostly steeple after another, he seemed to hear them pealing forth. Yet, so far as he could remember, he had never in real life heard church bells ringing. He got away from Mr. Charrington and went down the stairs alone, so as not to let the old man see him reconnoitring the street before stepping out of the door. He had already made up his mind that after a suitable interval, a month, say, he would take the risk of visiting the shop again. It was perhaps not more dangerous than shirking an evening at the centre. The serious piece of folly had been to come back here in the first place after buying the diary and without knowing whether the proprietor of the shop could be trusted. However, yes, he thought again, he would come back. Even the lunatic project of renting the room upstairs flashed momentarily through his mind again. For perhaps 5 seconds, exultation made him careless, and he stepped out onto the pavement without so much as a preliminary glance through the window. Suddenly, his heart seemed to turn to ice, and his bowels to water. A figure in blue overalls was coming down the pavement, not 10 meters away. It was the girl from the fiction department, the girl with dark hair. The light was failing, but there was no difficulty in recognizing her. She looked him straight in the face, then walked quickly on, as though she had not seen him. For a few seconds, Winston was too paralyzed to move. Then he turned to the right and walked heavily away, not noticing for the moment that he was going in the wrong direction. At any rate, one question was settled. There was no doubting any longer that the girl was spying on him. She must have followed him here, because it was not credible that by pure chance she should have happened to be walking on the same evening up the same obscure back street, kilometres distant from any quarter where party members lived. It was too great a coincidence. Whether she was really an agent of the thought police or simply an amateur spy actuated by officiousness hardly mattered. It was enough that she was watching him. Probably she'd seen him go into the pub as well. It was an effort to walk. The lump of glass in his pocket banged against his thigh at each step, and he was half-minded to take it out and throw it away. The worst thing was the pain in his belly. Then the spasm passed, leaving a dull ache behind. The street was a blind alley. Winston halted, stood for several seconds, wondering vaguely what to do, then turned round and began to retrace his steps. As he turned, it occurred to him that the girl had only passed him 3 minutes ago, and that by running he could probably catch up with her. He could keep her on track till they were in some quiet place, and then smash her skull in with a cobblestone. The piece of glass in his pocket would be heavy enough for the job. But he abandoned the idea immediately, because even the thought of making any physical effort was unbearable. He could not run. He could not strike a blow. Besides, she was young and lusty and would defend herself. He thought also of hurrying to the community centre and staying there till the place closed, so as to establish a partial alibi for the evening. But that too was impossible. A deadly lassitude had taken hold of him. All he wanted was to get home quickly and then sit down and be quiet. It was after 22 hours when he got back to the flat. The lights would be switched off at the main at 23:30. He went into the kitchen and swallowed nearly a teacupful of Victory gin, then went to the table in the alcove, sat down, and took the diary out of the drawer. But he did not open it at once. From a telescreen, a brassy female voice was squalling a patriotic song. He sat staring at the marbled cover of the book, trying, without success, to shut the voice out of his consciousness. It was at night that they came for you. Always at night. The proper thing was to kill yourself before they got you. Undoubtedly, some people did so. Many of the disappearances were actually suicides. But it needed desperate courage to kill yourself in a world where firearms or any quick and certain poison were completely unprocurable. He thought with a kind of astonishment of the biological uselessness of pain and fear, the treachery of the human body which always freezes into inertia at exactly the moment when a special effort is needed. He might have silenced the dark-haired girl if only he had acted quickly enough. But precisely because of the extremity of his danger, he had lost the power to act. He opened the diary. It was important to write something down. The woman on the telescreen had started a new song. Her voice seemed to stick into his brain like jagged splinters of glass. He tried to think of O'Brien, for whom or to whom the diary was written, but instead he began thinking of the things that would happen to him after the thought police took him away. It would not matter if they killed you at once. To be killed was what you expected. But before death, nobody spoke of such things, yet everybody knew of them. There was the routine of confession that had to be gone through, the grovelling on the floor and screaming for mercy, the crack of broken bones, the smashed teeth and bloody clots of hair. Why did you have to endure it, since the end was always the same? Why was it not possible to cut a few days or weeks out of your life? Nobody ever escaped detection, and nobody ever failed to confess. When once you had succumbed to thought crime, it was certain that by a given date you would be dead. Why then did that horror which altered nothing have to lie embedded in future time? He tried, with a little more success than before, to summon up the image of O'Brien. We shall meet in the place where there is no darkness, O'Brien had said to him. He knew what it meant, or thought he knew. The place where there is no darkness was the imagined future, which one would never see, but which by foreknowledge one could mystically share in. But with the voice from the telescreen nagging at his ears, he could not follow the train of thought further. He put a cigarette in his mouth. Half the tobacco promptly fell out onto his tongue, a bitter dust which was difficult to spit out again. The face of Big Brother swam into his mind, displacing that of O'Brien. The face gazed at him, heavy, calm, protecting. But what kind of smile was hidden beneath the dark moustache? Like a leaden knell, the words came back at him. War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength. It was the middle of the morning, and Winston had left the cubicle to go to the lavatory. A solitary figure was coming towards him from the other end of the long, brightly lit corridor. It was the girl with dark hair. 4 days had gone past since the evening when he had run into her outside the junction. They were perhaps 4 meters apart when the girl stumbled and fell almost flat on her face. A sharp cry of pain was wrung out of her. Winston stopped short. The girl had risen to her knees. Her face had turned a milky yellow colour, against which her mouth stood out redder than ever. Her eyes were fixed on his with an appealing expression that looked more like fear than pain. A curious emotion stirred in Winston's heart. In front of him was an enemy who was trying to kill him. In front of him also was a human creature in pain. "You're hurt?" he said. "It's nothing. I'll be all right in a second." She spoke as though her heart were fluttering. She had suddenly turned very pale. "You haven't broken anything?" "No, I'm all right." She held out her free hand to him, and he helped her up. "It's nothing," she repeated shortly. "I only gave my wrist a bit of a bang. Thanks, comrade." And with that she walked on in the direction in which she had been going, as briskly as though it had really been nothing. The whole incident could not have taken as much as half a minute. Not to let one's feelings appear in one's face was a habit that had acquired the status of an instinct. Nevertheless, it had been very difficult not to betray a momentary surprise, for in the 2 or 3 seconds while he was helping her up, the girl had slipped something into his hand. As he passed through the lavatory door, he transferred it to his pocket and felt it with the tips of his fingers. It was a scrap of paper folded into a square. He went back to his cubicle, sat down, threw the fragment of paper casually among the other papers on the desk, put on his spectacles, and hitched the speakwrite towards him. 5 minutes, he told himself. 5 minutes at the very least. The thing that was written on the paper might be a threat, a summons, an order to commit suicide, a trap of some description. But there was another, wilder possibility that kept raising its head, though he tried vainly to suppress it. This was that the message did not come from the Vault Police at all, but from some kind of underground organization. Perhaps the Brotherhood existed, after all. Perhaps the girl was part of it. He rolled up the completed bundle of work and slid it into the pneumatic tube. 8 minutes had gone by. He readjusted his spectacles on his nose and drew the next batch of work towards him, with the scrap of paper on top of it. He flattened it out. On it was written, in a large, unformed handwriting, "I love you." For several seconds, he was too stunned even to throw the incriminating thing into the memory hole. When he did so, he could not resist reading it once again, just to make sure that the words were really there. For the rest of the morning, it was very difficult to work. Lunch in the hot, crowded, noise-filled canteen was torment. Just once, he caught a glimpse of the girl at a table with 2 other girls at the far end of the room. She appeared not to have seen him, and he did not look in that direction again. Tonight was one of his nights at the community centre. He took part in the solemn tomfoolery of a discussion group, played 2 games of table tennis, swallowed several glasses of gin, and sat through a lecture entitled Ing Sok in relation to chess. His soul writhed with boredom, but for once he had no impulse to shirk his evening at the centre. At the sight of "I love you," the desire to stay alive had welled up in him, and the taking of minor risks suddenly seemed stupid. It was not till 23 hours, when he was home and in bed, in the darkness where you were safe even from the telescreen, so long as you kept silent, that he was able to think continuously. It was a physical problem that had to be solved. How to get in touch with the girl and arrange a meeting. He did not consider any longer the possibility that she might be laying some kind of trap for him. He knew that it was not so because of her unmistakable agitation when she handed him the note. Obviously, she had been frightened out of her wits, as well she might be. Nor did the idea of refusing her advances even cross his mind. Only 5 nights ago, he had contemplated smashing her skull in with a cobblestone, but that was of no importance. He thought of her naked, youthful body as he had seen it in his dream. He had imagined her a fool, like all the rest of them. A kind of fever seized him at the thought that he might lose her, the white, youthful body might slip away from him. But the physical difficulty of meeting was enormous. Finally, he decided that the safest place was the canteen. If he could get her at a table by herself, it might be possible to exchange a few words. For a week after this, life was like a restless dream. For 3 dreadful days, she did not appear at all. If there was any relief, it was in his work, in which he could sometimes forget himself for 10 minutes at a stretch. He had absolutely no clue as to what had happened to her. There was no inquiry he could make. She might have been vaporized. She might have committed suicide. She might have been transferred to the other end of Oceania. Worst and likeliest of all, she might have simply changed her mind and decided to avoid him. The next day, she reappeared. The relief of seeing her was so great that he could not resist staring directly at her for several seconds. On the following day, the evidence was when it was low murmur, Winston began speaking. Neither of them looked up. What time do you leave work?
18:30.
Where can we meet?
Victory Square, near the monument. It's full of telescreens. Doesn't matter if there's a crowd.
Any signal?
No. Don't come up to me until you see me among a lot of people. And don't look at me. Just keep somewhere near me.
What time?
19 hours.
All right. Winston was in Victory Square before the appointed time. At 5 minutes past the hour, the girl had still not appeared. Again, a terrible fear seized upon Winston. She was not coming. She had changed her mind. He walked slowly up to the north side of the square and got a sort of pale-coloured pleasure from identifying St. Martin's Church, whose bells, cab bells, had chimed, "You owe me 3 farthings." Then he saw the girl standing at the base of the monument, reading or pretending to read a poster which ran spirally up the column. It was not safe to go near her until some more people had accumulated. There were telescreens all round the pediment. But at this moment there was a din of shouting and a zoom of heavy vehicles from somewhere to the left. Suddenly everyone seemed to be running across the square. The girl nipped nimbly round the lions at the base of the monument and joined in the rush. Winston followed. As he ran, he gathered from some shouted remarks that a convoy of Eurasian prisoners was passing. Already, a dense mass of people was blocking the south side of the square. Winston, at normal times the kind of person who gravitates to the outer edge of any kind of scrimmage, shoved, butted, squirmed his way forward into the heart of the crowd. Soon he was within arm's length of the crowd, but the way was blocked by an enormous pole, an almost equally enormous woman who seemed to form an impenetrable wall of flesh. Winston wriggled himself sideways and with a violent lunge managed to drive his shoulder between them. He was next to the girl. They were shoulder to shoulder, both staring fixedly in front of them. A long line of trucks with wooden-faced guards armed with submachine guns standing upright in each corner was passing slowly down the street. In the trucks, little men in shabby greenish uniforms were squatting, jammed close together. Truckload after truckload of the sad faces passed. Winston knew they were there, but he saw them only intermittently. The girl's shoulder and her arm right down to the elbow were pressed against his. Her cheek was almost near enough for him to feel its warmth. She had immediately taken charge of the situation, just as she had done in the canteen. She began speaking in the same expressionless voice as before, with lips barely moving, a mere murmur easily drowned by the din of voices and the rumbling of the trucks.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you get somebody afternoon off?
Yes.
Then listen carefully. You have to remember this. Go to Paddington Station.
With a sort of military precision that astonished him, she outlined the route that he was to follow. A half-hour railway journey, turn left outside the station, 2 kilometers along the road, a gate with a top bar missing, a path across a field, a grass-grown lane, a track between bushes. It was as though she had a map inside her head.
Are you sure you remember everything?
Yes.
Then get away from me as quick as you can.
But for the moment they could not extricate themselves from the crowd. The trucks were still filing past, the people still insatiably gaping. The convoy was drawing to an end. In the last truck, he could see an aged man, his face a mass of grizzled hair. It was almost time for Winston and the girl to part. But at the last moment, while the crowd still hemmed them in, her hand felt for his and gave it a fleeting squeeze. With hands locked together, invisible among the press of bodies, they stared steadily in front of them, and instead of the eyes of the girl, the eyes of the aged prisoner gazed mournfully at Winston out of nests of hair. Winston picked his way up the lane through dappled light and shade, stepping into pools of gold wherever the boughs parted. Under the trees to the left of him, the ground was misty with bluebells. He was a bit early. It was not easy to make a journey by yourself without attracting attention. However, no patrols had appeared, and on the walk from the station, he had made sure by cautious backward glances that he was not being followed. The lane widened, and in a minute he came to the footpath she had told him of, a mere cattle track which plunged between the bushes. The bluebells were so thick underfoot that it was impossible not to tread on them. He knelt down and began picking some. He had got together a big bunch and was smelling their faint, sickly scent when a sound at his back froze him. The unmistakable crackle of a foot on twigs. He went on picking bluebells. It was the best thing to do. It might be the girl, or he might have been followed after him. To look round was to show good. He picked another and another. A hand fell lightly on his shoulder. He looked up. It was the girl. She shook her head, evidently as a warning that he must keep silent, then parted the bushes and quickly led the way along the narrow track into the wood. When Winston followed her, he found that they were in a natural clearing, a tiny grassy knoll surrounded by tall saplings that shut it in completely. The girl stopped and turned.
Here we are,
she said. He was facing her at several paces distance. As yet, he did not dare move nearer to her.
I didn't want to say anything in the lane,
she went on.
in case there's a mic hidden there. I don't suppose there is, but there could be. There's always the chance of one of those swine recognizing your voice. We're all right here.
He still had not the courage to approach her. Are you right here?
Yes. Look at the trees.
They were small ashes which at some time had been cut down and had sprouted up again into a forest of poles, none of them thicker than one's wrist.
There's nothing big enough to hide a mic in. Besides, I've been here before.
He had managed to move closer to her. She stood before him very upright, with a smile on her face that looked faintly ironical, as though she were wondering why he was so slow to act. He took her hand. Now that you've seen what I'm really like, can you bear to look at me? He said.
Yes, easily.
I'm 39 years old. I've got a wife that I can't get rid of. I've got varicose veins. I've got 5 false teeth.
I couldn't care less,
said the girl. The next moment, it was hard to say by whose act she was in his arms. He had pulled her down onto the ground. She was utterly unresisting. But the truth was that he had no physical sensation, except that of mere contact. It was too soon. Her youth and prettiness had frightened him. He was too much used to living without women. He did not know the reason. The girl picked herself up and pulled a bluebell out of her hair. She sat against him, putting her arm round his waist.
Never mind, dear. There's no hurry. You've got the whole afternoon. Isn't this a splendid hideout? I found it when I got lost once on a community hike. If anyone was coming, you could hear them 100 meters away.
What's your name? Said Winston.
Julia. I know yours.
It's Winston. Winston Smith. How did you find that out? I expect I'm better at finding things out than you are, dear. Tell me, what did you think of me before that day I gave you the note? He did not feel any temptation to tell lies to her. I hated the sight of you, he said. I wanted to rape you and then murder you afterwards. 2 weeks ago, I thought seriously of smashing your head in with a cobblestone. If you really want to know, I imagined that you had something to do with the thought piece. The girl laughed delightedly, evidently taking this as a tribute to the excellence of her disguise. Not the thought piece! From your general appearance, merely because you're young and fresh and healthy, you understand, I thought that you thought I was a good party member, pure in word and deed. And you thought that if I had a quarter of a chance, I'd denounce you to all the world and get you killed off. If this is not a thing that doesn't the scarlet sash of the anti-sexy, then she felt struck against the party. It was a political affair. Unlike Winston, she had grasped the inner meaning of the party's sexual puritanism. It was not merely that the sex instinct created a world of its own which was outside the party's control and which therefore had to be destroyed. What was more important was that sexual inclination induced hysteria, which was desirable because it could be transformed into warfare and leader worship. The way she put it was, when you make love, you're using up energy, and afterwards you feel happy and don't give a damn for anything. They can't bear you to feel like that. They want you to be bursting with energy all the time. All this marching up and down and cheering and waving flags is simply sex gone sour. If you're happy inside yourself, why should you get excited about Big Brother and 3-year plans and 2 minutes aid and all the rest of it? twisted herself around and pressed her bosom up against him. Her body seemed to be pouring some of its youth and vigour into his. Yes, I like that, he said. Then stop talking about dying. And now listen, we've got to fix up about the next time we meet. May as well come back to the place in the wood. You've given it a good long rest. But you must get there by a different way this time. I've got it all planned out. And in her practical way, she scraped together a small square of dust. And with a twig of a pigeon's nest, began rolling them out on the floor.
Juliet Stevenson was reading from 1984 by George Orwell. It was abridged by Robin Brooks, directed by Barry Spears, and produced by Justin Willett.